Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 5 of ECA on the Mic. I am your broadcast director, Max De Silva, and I am joined by the lovely Aaron Adira. Aaron, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing great. Excited for the episode today. Excited to get into what we have planned here for you guys. Great to be back.
It's going to absolutely be a wonderful time today. We've got Magic the Gathering on the docket, but we've also got some ECA news from the past week. Aaron, what do we have?
Yeah, so first, I just want to give a shout out to the Counter-Strike competitive leagues season. They're currently underway. They have 3 teams competing this season, being the varsity team, of course, and then the Raiders team, and then also MSU Green team. So definitely keep an eye out for them. They're going to have their matches for the season being streamed on the MSU_CSGO Twitch page. So be sure to head over there and see what they got going on, follow their season. And then following that, we've got MSU Overwatch competitive team. The MSU White team had a 2-0 victory over Purdue Black on Wednesday in a 5 overtime game win to bring home the sweep. So big shout outs to them, big congratulations. We'll be rooting for them. You can find their season underway on the MSU Valorant, all one word, Twitch page. So be sure to keep an eye out for them as well in their season.
Rounding out MSU Club competitive news, we've got Michigan State Rainbow Six Siege, we've got the varsity MSU Green and the JV MSU White competing in the Midwest R6 tournament. MSU Green actually went up against our rivals U of M, and unfortunately they had a heartbreaking loss. It was very close in both games, but unfortunately U of M got the win. And JV, which I'm a part of, they had a very difficult match against Lindenwood University, and we did lose 2-0. But more information can be found at the Midwest R6 Twitter. You can see when things are being played, and if any members are streaming, we will make sure to let you know. If you aren't already in the ECA Discord, it's the best place to come up with all things gaming here at MSU. That is discord.gg/ECA of MSU. Again, that's discord.gg/ECA of MSU. We'll see you there. For now, though, Aaron, I think we can get right into bringing in our guest. I'm super duper excited for this. Let's bring him on in. Jay, welcome in, my friend. How are you? You want to introduce yourself? Maybe let us know who you are.
I'm Jay. I am a member of the Magic the Gathering Club, and I also spend some time in the Valorant Club and the League Club, and that's about all I do.
Awesome. Well, welcome to ECA on the Mic. We're glad to have you here. I am a Magic the Gathering player myself, just enjoy trading card games as a whole, and I've loved the thought of having one of you guys here on this podcast. So, from what I know, from what I played, there's a new set out, Murders at Karlov Manor.
We're gonna talk about Murders at Karlov Manor.
We're talking about Murders.
It's a lovely set with a lot of really fun cards that come out and a lot of new mechanics. So hold on, let me pull up all the new mechanics in Karlov Manor, because they revisited a few of the old mechanics that have been used in the past. So they have a disguise mechanic that was released, a cloak mechanic, an investigate mechanic, and a suspect mechanic, as well as collect evidence, which is more unique. And they are all like a little bit different from the old versions of already existing mechanics like morph or detain, and they're all very cool and unique in their own ways. And obviously the set is designed around solving mysteries, so they get a lot of flavor with the names of the effects and the main characters as a part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been seeing a whole lot of fun archetypes, including like some pretty powerful like endgame cards. I remember seeing, I'll try and pull a photo of this up for those of you watching on YouTube, a 7-mana card called Conspiracy Unraveler that lets you play spells without paying their mana cost if you exile cards from your graveyard equaling 10 mana. So it seems like it's just a way to cheat things out, and it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, especially in like Commander and stuff like that, where you just want to get big things on the field.
Absolutely. There's a lot of cool cards that are going to be, for every set, always going to be staples in Commander. But most people will be really looking at the Karlov Manor set because I believe it's going into Standard.
Hmm.
And looking at a lot of the cheaper but very utility cards here, like the 1 mana and 1 white Doorkeeper Thrall, which has
Oh.
the ability to stop ETB, enter the battlefield triggers from artifacts and creatures. And it's a new white card, new stacks piece, and it itself has flash. Which is very
So,
cool.
in other words, no more blink decks. But it's not going to get rid of blink decks. We're always going to
Not
have
gonna get
blink.
rid of them.
But still, it's a
Very
blink counter.
fun, very fun way to just say your deck doesn't work. Absolutely. And,
One question I do have, as someone who doesn't play Magic, how does this new set kind of affect the meta? Like, what do you think is going to be the changes? What are your hypothesis theories of what's going to change?
well, I'm very much a Commander player. In Magic, there's a lot of different uh, game modes.
Formats, right?
Formats is the name. Thank you very much. And so you'll see most casual players lean towards the 100 card singleton format of Commander, where you just can only get 1 card of each. You may only have 1 of each card, and it's a 100 card deck. And it's basically every card to have ever existed. And normally, when you see that, when you see a new set come out, you're going to be looking at all the biggest, coolest, and flashiest cards, and they're going to be put into decks somewhere, and then all the utility cards will find their places. But there's absolutely a lot of cards in this set that are going to be affecting Commander, and maybe even CDH, which is the competitive Commander format. Although comparing them is kind of weird because they don't feel like the same game.
They really don't. It's
Yeah.
so it like competitive EDH is where you start getting the turn 0, turn 1 kind of decks where you just combo off. It's
Way more
insane.
interaction.
Yeah.
You're gonna be in CDH. You're more trying to combo win, as Max, is that your name?
Yes, that's me.
As Max said. And so you want to have a lot of protection for your cards, and be able to effectively get that combo out. So you're not really going to change too much of what's happening. You're always going to be playing the best version of like this defensive ability. Grand Abolishers or counter spells or tutors. Tutors are effects that let you search for a card and put it into your hand. Those are always going to be strong in CDH. In EDH or Commander, casual format, you get those cool cards. And then Standard, Modern, and even Vintage, Legacy, and Pioneer are more of the formats that get really shaken up by a new set. So Standard is the format that goes back,
I think it's 3. It's 3 or 4.
years now?
I think it's 3 or 4, but it's the one that has constant rotation. So it makes it so that you have to kind of adjust your game plan as new sets come out and old sets rotate out. I'll pull up exactly what it is right now. Current standard format is the recent 9 to 12 Commander sets. So currently, the oldest set that is legal in Standard is Innistrad Midnight Hunt, which was released back in 2021, so about 3 years ago. And that is going to be legal until roughly fall, in which case it's going to say bye-bye, and we're going to see new sets rotate in to take their place. But
Absolutely.
it's kind of similar to how Pokemon, where the most consistent format is Standard. Ironically enough, I feel like Standard is very underplayed in Magic compared to any other trading card game. A lot of players are picking up more like Modern or Legacy or Commander. You don't want to stick in that rotating format.
Oh yeah, and it's especially because Wizards of the Coast keeps these formats very high cost. Playing in Standard, you're always going to have to buy cards from the new sets, and rares and uncommons, when they come out, they're a bit more expensive, but you want them in your deck, so you're going to be looking at every set paying around $100, $150 if you really want to be competing. Now, if you're over here at MSU, we allow proxies for most of our events, which is very, very nice. And we have legacy. We have standard tournaments, modern tournaments. We try and rotate every week and have a different highlight on each format. And so a lot of these, the lack of popularity with standard is kind of centered around that. I feel like, why would you buy cards you can't play when you can just play commander and also play fun cards?
Yeah.
And
Or even expanding it on to like modern, even like other constructed formats get more love, but something for I think more people to get into that kind of standard feel is limited, which Aaron, in case you may not know what this is essentially a format where there is a very restricted card pool. So this is your draft tournaments, your pre-releases, where you're essentially given a set number of booster packs, and from those cards you have to either build a deck or you pick a card and pass it on, and pick a card and pass it on, and you pull basically just like an NFL draft where you're drafting out cards to try and build a deck, and then you can throw in as many basic lanes as you'd like to build typically a 40 card instead of 60 card deck. But it's kind of like a more, it is limited, yes, but it's kind of like a more entry level competition for people wanting to get into like a standard-ish format.
Also, probably one of the most fun formats. I remember when I started, I didn't really have friends to like gather every couple of weeks to play, so I would just go to a card shop and be like, hey, there's a new set out, or can we draft some stuff? And it's very fun. You get to keep some cards, you get to build a deck, and it feels like yours every single week. Very fun. But I've also been looking at modern. Very cool format that I want to get into, specifically because they have now banned a card called Fury, which has been dominating the metagame for months. Oh my god.
For our viewers at home, tell us about Fury. What does it do?
It is an Evoke Elemental, which is a part of a cycle of 5 elemental cards, 1 for each color, that has the ability to pay a cheaper cost, in this case, exiling another red card from your hand, to play it for free, and then at the end of your turn, it sacrifices. Not at the end of your turn, I think
it's on ETB, essentially. Yeah.
It sacrifices itself as soon as it enters the battlefield. But this card had the effect to divide 4 damage however you want. And that was just a very strong effect. There was also another card in the deck that it was played called Grief, with the same evoke effect, except instead of dealing with some creatures on the board or dealing damage to your opponent, well, Fury couldn't deal damage to your opponent, just the creatures on board. Grief would remove a card from the opponent's hand. You would look at their hand, and you would take a card out of it that you didn't want to see. And this deck doesn't sound that strong until there was these cards that were 1 black mana that could revive a creature that was going to the graveyard. So you would evoke one of these elementals out, then you would tap the 1 land you had, because it was turn 1. You would put the effect on the card so that when it dies, it returns. It would die, it would return, and it would play its effect again. So you could play Grief and get rid of 2 cards. Of course, you're losing 3 cards in total for this effect, but you're also getting a big creature on turn 1.
Value.
It was very, very like toxic to deal with. I remember watching the most recent modern tournament, and my favorite deck to see in modern is a deck called Amulet Titan. It got absolutely dumpstered by this deck. The final matchup was just 2 of these decks. They're called scam decks.
Yeah, Rakdos scam.
Your cards and you get rid of them, and no one likes it. Sorry, they scam creatures out, and it's just the worst thing ever. So they banned Fury. People wanted it banned a lot sooner, but the card was a very recent addition, and most people believe Wizards of the Coast has their own reasons for not wanting to ban new cards early, because they want to make money.
So Aaron, this is probably all super confusing for you to hear as someone who I can't hear you right now. While he solves that problem, we'll figure out why that's having an issue. In the meanwhile, oh, there he is. Hello.
Okay, cool.
So Aaron,
Turned off.
This might be very confusing for you as someone who has literally no idea how TCGs work. You're mainly a video game kind of guy, fighting game kind of guy. What kind of stuff do you think you want to hear from our guest Jay and myself to maybe help some of our viewers at home understand this a little bit?
Yeah. So I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I guess one of my questions would be, if you are just starting out, what is like the most important most important step to getting into the game? Like, just is it finding the right deck? Is it even like understanding what all the cards do first before you build your deck? Or is there like certain strategies?
There's a fun thing about this. Wizards of the Coast actually did something. They started this a long time ago where they will actually give local game stores starter decks. You can go up to any local game store and say, hey, I'm a new player. Do you have any starter decks? They will hand you a 60 card deck for you to keep.
Okay.
For free. And it go to a local game store. I'm pretty sure myself and Jay both have the same advice.
Absolutely. I think my first advice is always getting people to play with. Because the starter decks are very fun. They get you into the game. They explain some of the rules of the magic. Because each deck has reminder text, so it'll tell you what this card does exactly. And it's very helpful for teaching you the game. And then once you get your group of friends, that's when you really get to start exploring decks. I know how I started is probably how many people started. I bought a pre-constructed deck, and there are these decks that they sell for $40 to $60 to $100, depending on where you buy them or which one. And they're just decks that have cards in them for you to use. You can just buy it and play it out of the box. I bought one for a format that is now long gone called Brawl, and then I added cards to it to make a commander deck with friends. I think they used to sell pre-constructed standard decks, if I'm
They did
not
a
mistaken.
little bit ago. I think they mostly stopped that now, unfortunately, but
They used to do that. And also you can just put a bunch of cards together. That's also a very useful way to start playing Magic. And you just get better as you play. You'll start playing with new people, you'll meet new people, you'll see a card and you'll be like, that's awful to play against, I'm gonna put it in my deck. And you also see prices of some cards that you want, and then eventually you're gonna start saving,
and then you end up spending way too much money on a commander deck.
way too much money.
Way
I have
too.
mine right here.
I have mine right here. This thing, I don't even know how much mine is worth at this point, but for me, it's an Animar Soul the Elements deck.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then how much is like the average price of a set to buy?
So they can change. You actually can build whatever you want. That's kind of the magic of Magic, if you will.
Yeah.
They even have a format, which I think is really cool. It's kind of similar to what Magic Club did, where they did the proletariat format. There's a format that's very similar called Pauper. And in that format, you're only allowed to use common cards. So it's a nice way to kind of get into the game, get a little competitive deck for a format at a cheaper price. And it's really, really awesome. And then once you start doing that, you can spend obscene amounts of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the price ranges. I remember I have these two decks that I play with. These are both real. Because I bring these back home for my local game store where they don't allow proxies. And there's a big disparity, even though these are both very fun to play. This cost me $50 to build all the cards. This is $1,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I was about to try and find my other deck, but mine is exactly the same. It's like, I have this deck that's it's Paco. So it is a dog that gets bigger as you attack. That cost me $40. This Animar deck cost me $800.
Wow. Okay.
So
you can spend as much or as little as you want. If you are on campus, I will say every deck costs the same amount to print. So, and if you need sleeves, because we have our decks that are fake cards. We have sleeves with a card behind it, and then you just print out something you want. If you need any cards, please let me know. I have thousands sitting behind me that are worth nothing. And you just you print them out, cut them up, put them in sleeves, and you can play a $2,000 deck for $5 at the
Right.
library.
Yeah, and absolutely. And even if you wanted to like even just print out the cards, there are websites online where you can print out an entire deck of cards and have them shipped to you. Not tournament legal, of course, because they will not have the official Magic art on the back for like a good $20. And it's just a way to get a deck of cards to play with that's fun.
Yeah.
And here at Magic Club, they don't care.
Right.
Yes.
And then I guess since you mentioned it, Magic Club. So what just on a typical weekly meetup do you guys do? Yeah, is it just like free for all, just play whoever, or what is that like?
So every Wednesday when we meet for Magic Club, we have a good amount of events. Either there will be a tournament, a draft, and there's always free play. There's always people looking to like get a group together to play Commander, as it's the most popular format there. There's some people, I know there's people there trying to start a CDH group, trying to start people getting into the competitive aspect of Commander. There's next week there's going to be a draft for Brothers War, a set that released 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago. And we recently held our Proletariat tournament, which is our club's own format. Was started last year. Now it has its own ban list and rules and everything, and it has its own metagame, which I have many comments about, but I don't want the ban committee to get mad at me for saying on this podcast.
That's funny. Okay, cool.
Especially because I showed up to the Proletariat tournament playing what was called Bad Elves. I called my deck Elf Scry. They called it Bad Elves, and I had put a lot of effort into this event. I had not played Proletariat at all. I knew some of the metagame. I built the deck on my own secretly. I submitted it without saying anything, and I wanted no one to look at the deck list. I had no one to practice against. I didn't want anyone to see it. I show up, and every staff member who like does deck checks had seen it in the spreadsheet for the game and checked the deck and looked at it and was just so confused. And
you didn't want him to leak the spice.
I mean, I went 0-4. It was like, I at least won 3 rounds, like in between that, somehow.
Okay.
That is funny.
It was very fun.
Okay. So what is that like preparing for a tournament? Is it just like does it depend on like what are the rule sets and parameters for the tournament, or like what's like allowed for each specific tournament? Yeah, what's that like?
For most tournaments, you're going to prepare whatever deck you want. Most of the time it'll be around the meta with a few changes to what you feel is best for your deck. So we saw a lot of decks known for the initiative, which was a mechanic that was put into Magic during a crossover with D&D, and those decks saw a lot of success. We saw mono white versions of those decks. We saw black, white, and red versions of those decks called Mardu. We saw black and white versions of those decks, and we saw red and white versions of those decks. And so you just make your own deck. You can make variations on meta decks. Then you go to practice. You just ask people, hey, does anyone have time at this point in the week? I want to go practice some of the decks that I made for the tournament, or one of the decks I'm going to use in the tournament. And then you show up and you play your rounds and you hope you do good. Typically, you're going to want to know what your deck does, played it a few times. There's some math that can go into it that has been discussed through the years that as Magic has been played on a professional level with both modern and standard formats. But that math is a little bit harder to apply to in our format, considering we're 20 cards lower and we're only $20 worth of cards in the entire deck, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very akin to almost a limited format in a sense, even. But it's also constructed. It's very different.
Get rid of channel. They need to get rid of channel. My
I honestly, I could see that absolutely making the format better. I agree. Get rid of channel.
We had a few old bans that were centered around the fact that you could get channel out on turn 1. So they banned
That's
a
funny.
card that gives you mana called Elvish Spirit Guide. You can exile it and it gives you 1 green mana. That's banned. The Simian Spirit Guide, which is the red version of that, is not banned. Then there is a card called Chancellor of the Dross, which, if you revealed it in your opening hand at the beginning of your upkeep, first turn basically, you gain 1 green mana. They were both banned because of their interaction with a card called Channel, which is 2 mana. You play it. It's 2 green mana specifically, and until the end of your turn, you can use your life as a mana source for colorless mana. You start with 20 life. If you could get this out turn 1, you could play a 10 cost spell, a 20 cost spell. One of the decks used right now is Lich's Mirror, a card that says if this is on the battlefield, when you go down to 0 hit points, you're going to shuffle everything you have into your deck, reset your life total, and draw 7 cards. This is like completely useless card, but in the sense that you can still pay life for your mana, and you don't lose your mana when it goes off. You just continue cycling through your deck. Continue playing a Lich's Mirror, killing yourself for mana, and drawing the rest of your deck, and just playing cards. And I don't like channel. I really don't think it brings a lot of uniqueness to the format. It's banned a lot of fast mana cards from the format, which fast mana is always a problem. Getting mana early causes problems for many formats. You'll see that in Legacy and Vintage, and a lot of one-turn combos where you'll have to ban cards because they're just annoying to deal with. But why not just ban channel too?
That's fair.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun though. Aaron, what else are you interested in learning about the lovely joys of Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, what you kind of briefly touched on it just now. What are the I guess who are like the rule setters? Who's like in charge of like what's legal, what's not? Is it more of just like the community collectively agrees, or is there like a decided upon like board or something like that? Because I know in other communities, at least regionally, they have people that are in charge of those things. So yeah.
For this format or for overall?
I guess both. Yeah, both.
So here at MSU, we have a ban committee for the proletariat format.
Okay.
I actually think it is the secretary, the treasurer, and I don't remember how we decided on the rules committee, but I'm pretty sure it's just most of the people in the positions.
The
What are
board,
they
the
called?
e-board.
The board, yes.
Mhm.
So anyone who's like very involved, every member of the board is very involved in that format. So they all
Mhm.
know what cards are very powerful. They look at the stats, they look at the tournaments.
Mhm.
But as for other formats in Magic, there is a ban committee. We don't know who, and most people say that the ban committees are very influenced by the company itself, and
Wizards.
not for the benefit of the players, but for the benefit of the company as well.
Okay.
However, there is one format where the community does get basically entire control, and that is Commander. Commander is entirely controlled by their own Rules Advisory Committee and Rules Committee. So they have 2 groups. They are called the Rules Committee and the Commander Advisory Group. The Rules Committee is in charge of making the ban list and making the rules, setting the rules of Commander. Commander Advisory Group allows for community input from trusted community leaders into that process. And Wizards, despite printing so many things dedicated to Commander, has remained hands-off of the format, which so many people are happy about.
Okay. Interesting.
There's also very few banned cards in Commander.
Yes!
Compared to other formats, it's very, very small with the fact that it is the biggest pool of cards you can play.
Yeah, I think every single set is legal besides cards that are banned. I don't think there's any set that you can't play. Like, if you wanted to, you could play cards from the first set ever released as long as they're not on the ban list.
Okay, interesting.
People do play the Black Lotus in Commander. I haven't seen it at Club. I understand it's a proxy format, but people still don't want to play these cards that are like $60,000.
Yes.
Mhm.
But there's a
guess-
lot of fun. There's a lot of fun
I guess
stuff.
a question for the both of you. Do you guys compete kind of like outside of Club in Magic at all, or like go to any events or tournaments or competitions, anything like that?
We do go to the limited tournaments. We have the club itself is a great way to meet people who are willing to like drive you to the local game shop. That's they have one they prefer. I haven't gotten with them yet.
Evolution Games, I believe.
Evolution Games, yeah, they went there last week to go to a limited draft for the new set at Murders at Karlov Manor, and there's also people who are willing to play just throughout the week. Like, I know almost every day this week, someone has asked, "Hey, does anyone want to play games tonight? Does anyone want to play Commander tonight? We'll meet at this hall." We're also very loud, so if you ever pass us, like in our most popular places, like McDonald or the third floor of the library, you see people at a table, it's probably some members of the Magic the Gathering Club.
I gotta show up to more of those. I personally, as well, when I'm at home, it's way easier for me to show up to limited events. Nice thing about Wizards, they run events at most local game stores every Friday called Friday Night Magic. But unfortunately, Magic has been slipping away from me as I play way too much Pokemon.
I'm very far detached from a lot of the limited formats now that I'm here in Michigan. But when I go back home, that's pretty much all I play is with my local game shop, because they're just very, very good ways of getting into Magic.
Yeah, it kind of becomes like a little family, a little community. You get to know everyone's names, everyone's faces. It's a great place.
Yeah.
Those people have been very positive. I didn't expect to meet that many friends at a Magic the Gathering shop. Like, it's not definitely not something people prepare you for.
Absolutely not.
Where is the nearest like game shop that hosts competitions?
Evolution Games. That is the one that is in Lansing, near not Meridian Mall, the other mall, the Lake Lansing Mall, I believe is what it's called. But they run both Pokemon and Magic the Gathering events, as well as Flesh and Blood. We are not sponsored by them at all, but they are a wonderful supporter of the MSU community, and we love them. Go give them support if you're in the area.
Great.
I remember there being another very close one that the only Magic shop I've been to in Lansing or Michigan was one called AFK Games, and I remember biking there, and it said it would take me an hour to bike there or something, and I had a class later in the day. I had a class at like 2, so I left at around 10. It did not take me an hour to get there. I was late for my class. It was the worst experience ever. Almost got hit by a car. Don't bike for an hour and a half to buy a deck of cards. It was not worth it. I mean, I still have them. These are what I bought. I bought these 2 boxes and some sleeves. So I put them to good use. It was just, I never want to do that again. Ask someone to drive you places.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. I think that covers it for a base knowledge of Magic overall for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more daunting than people think. It is, because there's so many words.
Right?
Yeah, it's been around since the 90s, or like even the 80s, or like late 80s, early 90s. Like, my mom got me into this game because she got into it when she was a kid. That is how long the community has been around. It's basically been around for as long as Pokemon has.
Wow. Okay.
I'm glad it's not as simple as it was back in the 90s, but the game is still relatively, I need a big relatively simple. There are a lot of cards with a lot of text that you'll have to read, and if you've played Yu-Gi-Oh, that doesn't matter to you. If you play Pokemon, well,
It's
Pokemon
like
actually has
Pokemon's
more text now.
yeah, it's a little
pretty
bit
good with
different.
that.
Yeah. It's
Um,
like in terms of complexity, it probably goes Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
And of course, the famous analogy, reading the card explains the card. Until it doesn't, which it doesn't on a few cards.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm looking at you, Wheel of Misfortune.
That is the worst example. Hands down, that is the worst example because reading the card quite literally explains how
It
that
does?
works.
It's just that even when most
It's
people
a
read the
lot.
card, they still don't understand it.
No, let's talk about the reminder text for banding.
Yeah, so banding essentially allows one or as many creatures as you'd like to attack
With banding.
with banding specifically to attack in a band, and then you can assign their
Plus one
damage.
creature without banding.
Yes, and then you can assign their damage individually after they've been blocked. So, for example, you can just it's complicated. Banding's weird.
Yeah, that sounds complicated. Is it like a team up thing?
Yeah, basically.
It's like you
Okay.
combine them as one creature and attack with them,
Yeah.
which is great. That sounds so simple on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get the most basic like keyword effects in Magic, where you'll get a creature that has first strike, where first strike is an ability to hit before the opponent hits. So what if one of your banding creatures is first strike? Do they all get first strike?
Right.
Then there's Death Touch, which is any damage dealt by the creature with Death Touch kills a creature. Does
Okay.
one of
Every
the banding
creature have
creatures have
Death
Death
Touch?
Touch? Do all of them
Right.
have Death Touch?
Right.
And just continue on through every basic keyword list, and it makes the banding keyword very hard to understand. I remember seeing a video of like interviewing judges on interactions. These judges, people who are supposed to know the rules down pat, know how interactions work, know stuff like layers, which I don't want to explain here.
It's essentially the way cards are modified. That's the
Exactly.
easy way to say it.
Yeah, and they looked at like the same situation with banding, and it was I think 3 judges, and they went over 3 different sets of banding interactions, and every single answer was different. Every single outcome and answer was different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No agreements. Oh no.
For reference,
Why
on the
it's not
MTG wiki, the reminder text is banding, and then roughly about 2 paragraphs worth of text to explain the mechanic. That is how painful it is.
Yeah, that's a lot. But
It's very funny.
Oh wait, we
Hmm.
started talking about standard with Karlov Manor.
We did.
I forgot to mention the last standard set with Caverns of Ixalan, and how fast they banned a card called Surveyor.
That does sound right,
Card
yeah.
Within 11 days of release, that got banned because they introduced a new mechanic, which was a new version of an old mechanic. That's something Magic is doing right now, is trying to revisit old mechanics and make them better or less powerful. There's an old mechanic called Cascade that lets you get a free card after you cast a card, and it's dependent on the mana value of the card you cast, and you just get a free card after it. It goes off the top of your deck, and that was very powerful because there's a few cards that cost 0 mana, and they're made with a different mechanic called Suspend, where you're supposed to pay a cost and wait a few amount of turns, and then they happen. But because you can't cast them normally, they have 0 mana, so you'll cascade into them. They tried to change it by making something called Discover, which the mana value, it's Cascade, except it tells you how much the mana value of the card is.
Okay.
This was great until it made a turn 2 kill combo in Modern that was very easy to hit. It was probably going to be the strongest deck in the format until they banned it. Rightfully so, because that deck is still very powerful. It's a very big entrance into like the format. Sorry, standard, not modern. It made a great splash.
Okay.
Makes one of my favorite colors actually do stuff. I love red and black. Those are my favorite colors. I hate blue. Burning passion. I'm sorry. You deserve
You're
that.
wearing
You
blue?
deserve
What
you-
that? Let me play the counter spells.
It has its own problems.
Teamer
Wait, so yeah,
or
you guys
Jund.
need
Best combo. Jund.
Okay.
Red,
You guys
Yeah.
green,
need
and
to change
blue.
The colors. What are the color? What are the significance of the colors?
Ah, yes, the color pie.
There's a very fun mechanic, not mechanic, it's just the color pie and how magic is divided. So there are 5 colors in magic. You got black. Let me go in the right order. White, blue, black, red, and green.
Yes.
So all of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. And when magic cards are being designed, they have a color in mind or a combination of colors in mind that help that are in line with what the effect does. So
like
some
categories on-
basic
Yeah, kind of.
some basic categories for all things is like red has a lot of burn effects or creatures that attack quickly, like haste, so they'll attack on the turn they're played, or deal 3 damage to target player, or
Big
like the
damage
Fury
fast.
card, damage
Mhm.
fast. Green is really good with effects like getting a lot of mana very quickly, getting big creatures. That's normally what green is known for. White is very downplayed, but I think it's very strong.
It is.
Is always pointed to as the life gain thing, but I like how it also has the ability to create a bunch of creatures or remove a lot of enemy creatures, opponent's creatures, and just interact with the board by keeping it under control. It also has a lot of human synergies, but that doesn't have to be White's thing, but it just so happens that a lot of the humans they print are very white themed.
Because a lot of them are like knights, almost.
Knights, yeah. A lot of knights. I have my own knight deck, love the knights. And then you have blue.
It's
You
no.
almost,
It
like,
says.
you
It
sound
says.
excited.
It says. It's basically. Say no. It's essentially don't let your opponent play cards. Draw extra cards. Mill. And just interact with the board. So it is the control color. It just essentially is revolved around controlling the board state to make it what you want it to be, and the opposite of what your opponent wants it to be. It's very fun.
And there's very few cards that are actually strong, like creatures that are strong in blue. And there are a few metas where they have had strong creatures, like Delver or True Name Nemesis, that have been big problems because blue, it gets a lot of strength with its card draw and control. It shouldn't have the strengths of the creatures. Really, really shouldn't.
It should.
Then you get to I've been left with black. Is that
You
the last one
have,
to explain?
yes.
Black is my favorite color. We get to do everything as long as you pay life for it. That's one of the most important parts. And
Or
also,
sacrifice.
we get a lot of sacrifice, death triggers, a lot of graveyard stuff, so we get to interact with the graveyard. It basically, in a lot of decks, just becomes an extra hand. And that makes black very fun to play with. So all of them have their own unique effects, and then there's combinations of these effects that when you combine red and black or white and green, that they have their own design around that. And so all the cards are themed around that. All their costs are made specifically for that. And it makes cards very fun to play with, very cool flavor-wise, especially if you're making like custom cards. If you get really into Magic, you'll start making custom cards from other things you enjoy in life. I know I'm making a custom set with friends and we're like, oh, this character is definitely these colors, or this
Mm.
effect would definitely be this amount of mana and do this. And you really just gotta have fun with the color pie. And it's also changed over the years. The design, there's a really good, like, obviously don't spend too much time on YouTube, but YouTube documentaries about the changing of the color pie that I've spent way too much time watching.
Okay.
It's a whole
Nice.
rabbit hole.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay. I guess my last like out of their question is there any like aspect of like trading cards in the community? I don't know how like just trading among other people, like cards that you think would suit you and suit the other person. I don't know if that's like a common thing in trading card games. I don't know.
Absolutely. Trading
Okay.
cards is something very fun. I remember my first trade was actually for my no, not my first trade. It was my second trade. Oh no, my card's not here. Psh, I don't have to show it. I went to a pre-release for the Lord of the Rings set.
Hmm.
I bought a box, opened it, and I wanted to get a specific card that is now completely useless. It was a sword called Glamdring. If you like Lord of the Rings, important to that, and if you like magic, it's useless. It's a really bad card, but I wanted it, and at the time I had pulled none of it, but I was sitting across the table from someone who had pulled 2 of them, and I was like, oh, could I get that? And he was like, sure, let's see what cards we pulled. And I had pulled 2 of the Nazgul and didn't do a price check on either of the cards,
Oh no.
and traded both my Nazgul for that Glamdring. They didn't know the price either. They weren't a Magic player. They just were a collector, loved Lord of the Rings stuff, wanted to open cards.
Mhm.
Turns out, down the line, like a day after, the prices finally stabilized, and the Nazgul were $15 because they weren't. They were an uncommon card that wasn't allowed in any of the uncommon slots. It could just be in the special slot, and I got a rare that was worth less than $1.
Oh.
So I lost like $30 on that, and I don't
Yeah.
care because that made them happy. And then I
Yeah.
proceeded to trade a lot of the cards from that set for like my commander, or even now I trade. You can trade for cash or trade for other cards that you want. And people are willing to trade. I know that if you go to local game shops, everyone has trade binders. People at club have trade binders just to show off all your really cool cards. I like playing my really cool cards personally. But if there's a really cool blue card that I pull that I'm never gonna put in a deck, well, that goes in the trade binder because I'm not playing blue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Give in to the control.
Yeah, I love that aspect of a community where like people are willing to like, yeah, have some type of help each other get better, basically. Yeah.
It's a great community. Trading card games in general, oftentimes you find the nicest people playing those games. It's definitely, if you want to learn how to play the game, pretty much any avid player of that game will teach you. It is just a fact of life. Like, you ask them, hey, how do you play this? They will just say, hey, I've got an extra deck. You want to play against me and I'll teach you how?
Yeah, that's cool.
So now, Jay, I've got a little bit of a side question for you for maybe some of the more veteran Magic the Gathering players who may be watching this. Give me a rundown of your favorite decks. One for Modern, one for Commander. What are your 2 favorites?
Oh, Modern? I don't actually play Modern, but my favorite deck is, of course, Amulet Titan. I got to watch the Modern Pro Tour live. And I had no interest in Modern, but people were telling me, you need to watch it. It's cool. And I saw this deck called Amulet Titan, known for a card called Amulet of Vigor and Primeval Titan. Amulet of Vigor lets you untap cards when they come into the battlefield if they come in tapped. So, like, there are certain lands that say this comes in tapped. Well, it'll untap it when it comes in. And then there's Primeval Titan that'll go get you 2 lands when you play it and 2 lands when you attack with it. This is a very crazy deck that interacts with a card known as the Bounce Land that comes in taps. You have to return a land to your hand to play it, and it taps for 2 mana. However, when you play it, you can target itself and bounce it back to your hand, which feels useless, except with the Amulet of Vigor, it'll untap before it bounces back to your hand. So you can play it, untap it, tap it for the mana, put it back in your hand, and you get that mana very quickly. And if you have 2 amulets or even 3 amulets, you can do that 3 times, so you can get 6 mana on turn 2 and play your Primeval Titan, get more mana. It was a very cool deck. I remember reading there's a Google Doc on the player who made it to the semifinals about how to play the deck. It's like 17 pages. It talks about every single land in the deck, why the land's in the deck, how to interact with them, how to play them. And I think it's a very cool and complicated deck that I would like to learn and pick up. It's also very expensive, so I'm probably going to try and get some people here to play some Modern and practice Primeval Titan, practice Amulet Titan. Now that scam is gone. And then my favorite commander deck is my pride and joy, my Karn deck. Karn, I play Karn Legacy Reforged, which is a card that came out in a recent set called March of the Machine Aftermath. And it's known, I call it a mana rock. Mana rocks are typically 2 mana artifacts that tap for mana. This is a creature, but its ability is every turn gain mana, depending on how many artifacts you have. So I call it a mana rock. And the deck is Mana Rock Tribal. It runs something like under 25 lands. Very rare for a commander deck, which is supposed to run 30, 34, 32, 36 lands, up in the 30s. And then just a ton of mana rocks, just a bunch of things that cost very little, create mana. And I've pumped it with a lot of money. Like, we are seeing cards in ranges of like $200, easily a bunch of cards in the $20 to $80 ranges. And they all just create mana. And the payoff for this deck is, there are 3 combos that are very important. There's a lot of ways to get infinite mana, and if you do that, you can finish them off with a Staff of Domination, which allows you to allows you to use that mana to draw your deck, and eventually you win with that. There's cost reducers, which makes your cards cheaper, and there's an interaction with that effect, a card called Mystic Forge, which allows you to play artifacts off the top of your library, and then another card called Sensei's Divining Top, which if you play Sensei's Divining Top with a cost reducer, it costs 0 to play. And then it has the ability to tap, you draw a card, and then you put the Divining Top on your library. But with a Mystic Forge out, you can play it from the top of your library, and because it costs 1 less, so it's free, you're just able to draw your whole deck. So that's another combo in the deck. And my main combo is Millennial Calendar, a new card from Caverns of Ixalan that says, when you untap, every card that you untap adds a counter to this card, and then you can pay 2 and tap it to double the amount of counters on this card. And once it reaches 1,000 counters, every opponent loses 1,000 life. It's a silly card, something that it's overkill because everyone only has 40 life. I specifically play it so that in 2 turns I can get that combo. I have a lot of cards that say you can untap another artifact, so I'll untap it and double the amount of counters again.
Oh my god.
And I can do this enough to where it's like sufficiently a scary card in the deck. Like, people see it come out on turn 1 and they're like, hold on, Jay might like win in a few turns. Let's settle down. Let's try and destroy that first. But of course, if that gets destroyed, my backup plan is just, oh, I'm gonna win this turn. Hey guys, let me use my 25 mana, more than everyone else at the table, to win this turn. Also, it's a very fun deck because it's colorless. The commander has no color, so I can't put any colors in the deck. So I get to play some really unique cards that not many people see, as colorless can go in any deck. So a lot of the cards that are colorless aren't that strong, because if you make a colorless draw effect, well, it has to be weaker than blue's draw effect, because blue's made to draw cards. If you have a colorless damage effect, it has to be weaker than red's. And so you get this a bunch of these cards that are just way more expensive versions of already existing effects. and people don't know them. People think it's like, why are you playing a 7-mana card that says remove something when white has a 3-mana card that does that?
Yeah, that's definitely
I have
a fun thing, yeah. So, I also want to touch on my commander deck. That's my favorite, my baby. Animar Soul of the Elements, which basically is a 3-mana creature that has protection from white and black, so nothing can touch it if it's white or black. And whenever you cast a creature, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So that essentially allows you to increase its power and toughness, make it stronger, make it more resilient. And for every counter on it, each creature spell costs 1 less to cast. So, because of that, I'm able to pull out this guy. This guy is Ancestral Statue.
Oh god.
And so what he does is he allows me to bounce or return to my hand any creature that I control. So essentially, I can make an infinite loop where I can cast him for free an infinite amount of times and put an infinite amount of counters on Animar, and then play Walking Ballista. And essentially, I have X, which is basically any amount of mana, equal 10,000, and then I just hit everyone for 10,000 damage. And if I don't want to play that combo and I want to be nice, I can instead put a bunch of counters on him and then put out any of the Eldrazi cards that I have in my deck that are all colorless. So I've got things that make it so players can't play cards that are even mana cost. Void Winnower, Emrakul the Promised End, I get to take control of someone's turn. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, I can exile 2 cards of my choice. Kozilek Butcher of Truth has Annihilator. You have to sacrifice permanents to whenever I attack you. It's just a fun deck. It's great.
I would never play Eldrazi Titans unless they drew me cards, so that's why I have both Kozileks.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's definitely a whole bunch of different archetypes to play in Commander. Some people are extremely evil and play something called stacks, which essentially makes it so people cannot untap anything and play the game. It's worse than blue.
No hate to stacks.
No hate to stacks. I've played decks that are like, I've played stacks decks before. They can be fun, but they're painful. But they're still fun.
You only hate stacks decks if you build decks badly.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of making Commander games go long, and so everyone hates me because I have, in my colorless deck, I have every board wipe in colorless, which is how to clear a board. And then in all my other decks, I have at least 5. In my cheaper decks, I bump that number up because how else am I gonna win?
Yeah, board wipes they're so important.
I like talking to new players because a lot of players want to play the cool cards in their deck, and they're like, oh, I have 100 slots to play cool cards. When in reality, a deck's more like you get 25 slots to play cool cards, and then the rest is
consistency.
Playing the actual deck, like the consistent part of it. Card draw, mana,
and even then,
other people's stuff.
Sometimes you just need normal lands.
Basics. Most important land.
Yeah, but there's so much depth and amazing things about Magic, and it's constantly grown and evolved over time, and I'm sure, Jay, you agree with me that it's only going to get bigger and bigger, and it's just a wonderful community to be a part of.
Absolutely. I really, really do hope someday that a lot of the Commander formats become more accessible. We're seeing a lot of communities switch to proxies. A very big talk right now in a lot of communities is how they're switching to proxies because of how the price of Magic is going up. And while the increase in price of Magic has actually hurt the amount of people playing the game, a lot of people have left the game. There's very few people coming into the game because they know how much it costs. A lot of these proxy events that happen outside of the card shops, because it's not allowed to happen in a local card shop, actually have brought in a lot more people to play the game, and I just think that's the more important than anything. So if you're playing with real cardboard that you pulled, or a printed version of it, or even lined paper that you drew a name and the cost and the text of the card on, I just want people to be playing the game and enjoying it and having the time of their life. I think it's something I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And especially with things like Tabletop Simulator making it so that you can just play the game for free if you have the game with mods to essentially integrate it into the actual game itself. It just makes it so accessible for people just to throw down some virtual cardboard and swing for big damage in their opponent's face. So much fun. And with that, I think we're kind of getting close to the end of the episode. So, Jay, my friend, you have anything you'd like to plug? Any events coming up? Any social media that you want to give a shout out to?
Come to the Magic Club because of our draft next week. I personally have social media, but I will not plug that here because I got my own way of plugging social media with my own accounts and everything.
That's fair.
I do hope people show up to the club because of this. That's
Absolutely, yeah.
Just one day we'll even get an event for newcomers to have. I know we do that every year and every semester. We have a newcomers day. So if this episode releases before then, we'll let you know.
Oh, I'm sure it will. And absolutely, Magic Club is in our Discord in the club directory. You can join their Discord for more updates if you're wanting to know more. Where do you guys meet every week? What time are your events?
From 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, we meet in the Comart Sci building in room 138. Don't quote me on that. I know it's right across from the big glass room in the center where all the league players are. I always, like, if the turns are going especially long, take a break, step away, go to the league club, make fun of some of my friends, walk back.
Classic indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Jay. And Aaron, I imagine you've thoroughly enjoyed yourself as well, despite all of the nerd talk that you have no idea what we're talking about.
Well, please nerd out as much as you want.
Yeah, but we're glad to have you on, and with that, I want to thank everyone listening, tuning in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, listening in and watching us live here on the ECA On the Mic podcast. My name is Max Da Silva. I've been your broadcast director. I'm joined by our lovely PR director, Aaron Adira, and our special guest, Jay. With that being said, we'll see you all next time. Go green!
Cool.
Bye.